Welcome back to my channel. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts on what you think about this video at the end. US will never cease to shock us, guys, with new things every now and then. In this video, different people share their thoughts on the anti-boycott law, which is being introduced in the United States. Now, what the US government is trying to do is crack down boycotting. This is an amendment which was introduced to the Anti-Boycott Act of 2018. Now, this opposes restrictive trade practices or boycotts fostered or imposed by any foreign country against other countries friendly to the United States or against any United States person. So in simple terms, this basically prevents US companies and US people from engaging in boycotts that are enacted by foreign countries that go against countries that are friendly to the United States. Now, people are reacting to this in as much as it is said that this is not because of what is happening currently. Some feel there's more to this, and some feel this has everything to do with what is happening between Israel and Palestine. But check out these videos for more information. I will be right back.
U.S. government, U.S. government, have you lost your ever-loving mind? I mean, we know you have. But making it illegal to boycott companies that support Israel? Please. What are you going to do? Request our bank statements and see our accounts in the negative? What are you going to do about that? How are you going to enforce that? You are taking all of our money, and you're making it so that we don't make more. You're not raising minimum wage. You're not doing any of that. And you want to try and force us to spend money we don't have. Good luck on that. There are people saying they're not going to pay their taxes. And you think you're going to stop them from walking out, please?
As many of you might or might not know, it's illegal for any company or person to boycott any Israeli products in over 24 states, with more planning on passing this legislation under the Anti-Boycott Act in America. And as of recent, a new bill is being introduced to the House floor that plans on further expanding this Anti-Boycott Act. So to all my American friends and followers, this is what you do. Call your congressional representative, tell them that you oppose this bill, and if that they vote yes on this bill, that not only will you not be voting for them, but you will be actively supporting their opponent in the primaries, because this is the only way that will really scare them.
Guess what I just found out? In 37 US states, it is illegal to boycott the Israeli government. I'm going to say it again. In US states, the majority, it is illegal to boycott the Israeli government. And if you do, you are punished. You get fined. And at some point, they even said 20 years in prison, but I think they had to revoke it because that was psycho. And if you are a contracted worker in these 37 states, you literally have to sign a pledge. And if you don't, you're punished. So we have freedom of speech in this country, right? Right. We are allowed to boycott and criticize our government, our own elected officials, to pretty much any extent, because we have freedom of speech, right? But when it comes to another country's government, we have this loyalty oath. Do you understand how insane that is? How insane that is? It is not normal for our free speech to be free and then constrained when it comes to another country's government. Can you imagine if we had this loyalty oath, and when they were invading Ukraine, we couldn't go against Russia's government? The more I learn about the US and Israel's relationship, the worse it gets.
Thing is that 37 states of the United States have put into laws or in their legislation that it's illegal to boycott Israel. I have not researched this. You know how these things go. It's an internet thing. I don't know. I don't put it past the fucking politicians, but I just got one question. How the f do they intend to enforce that? What are you going to do? Have cops there making people buy shit from Israel? What are you going to do? Track everybody's purchasing and say, hey, you didn't buy stuff from Israel. We got to put you in jail. I want to see them enforce making us buy products or products around a country committing a genocide. I want to see them do it. I just, any of you right-wingers or pro-Israel people want to tell me how the fuck are you going to enforce that? Let me know.
The potential boycott ban in the US is a lot more serious than you thought, and here's why. And for context, I did a deep dive on this because I legitimately thought it was some kind of silly performative action that the US government was doing against the people who support Palestine and who are boycotting Israeli-supported companies, but as it turns out, there's a lot more to it than I thought. For example, there's an Anti-Boycott Act of 2018 and an Office of Anti-Boycott Compliance within the US, so this isn't a brand new thing. As written in the US's Bureau of Industry and Security website, these authorities discourage and in some circumstances prohibit U.S. companies from taking certain actions in furtherance or support of a boycott maintained by a foreign country like Palestine against a country friendly to the United States like Israel. It's called an unsanctioned foreign boycott. On top of that, 78% of citizens within the United States live in a state that has an anti-boycott law or policy. And this was all established prior to October 7th, prior to the current boycotts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reading this as any company within the United States who decides to boycott or pull out of Israel is going to get in major trouble. Now, to speak on the current IGO Anti-Boycott Act, let's look at the words of Congressman Mike Lawler, who actually introduced the measure. He states, "The IGO Anti-Boycott Act is an important measure in the global fight against anti-Semitism. By protecting U.S. companies from being forced to participate in boycotts against allied countries, Congress is firmly stating our proactive opposition to the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS movement, and other foreign boycotts that stand counter to American ideals." Now, as much as I want to pick apart this man's words, I'm not going to. I will let you do that in the comments and in your own reply videos. However, I am going to say one thing that is based on historical fact, and that is that the US is entirely based on our ability to boycott. We created our country out of boycotts. Saying that it is against American ideals to boycott companies that support and are a part of a country that is committing a genocide is absolutely ridiculous. It's not against American ideals, it's against your ideals, it's against your pocketbook, it's against your political agenda.
We need to talk about the anti-boycott laws again because Biden is trying to do something extremely dangerous on college campuses, and we need to go through why. So first, I made a video about anti-boycott laws, and I talked about how they apply to companies, organizations, and individuals, and a lot of you pushed back and said that it doesn't apply to individuals. And I'm here to tell you, sadly, it does. And the U.S. occupation, the government, really depends on us being ignorant and being unwilling to read documents thoroughly and fully and do more research, which allows for them to position or have specific messaging that wouldn't alarm individuals to just how much they are prying into our own First Amendment rights. So the U.S. government would like you to think that the Israeli anti-boycott laws are designed to allow U.S. states to enact laws requiring contractors to sign pledges promising not to boycott any goods from Israel or their contracts would be terminated. Just talking about business. But if you go further, oh, by the way, a lot of you said that it's hard to enact these things. Yes, and a lot of states said that if it passed federal legislature, it would be a lot more easier to enforce, which is why there's attempts yet again. But this is directly from the Bureau of Industry and Security, which is under the U.S. Department of Commerce, okay? This is on their website. So first it talks again about U.S. companies and how they must report to them the receipt of certain boycott-related requests for information. So anytime that organizers or organizations reach out to businesses and ask them to do boycott activities, they're supposed to report those activities to them to let them know that anti-boycott things are happening. So besides just being hit with not being able to do certain business or get certain business loans from, city or statewide like resources, they also are supposed to be like telling on us.
How are these new anti-boycott laws going to work? Like, are they going to give us money to spend at these places, or are we just all going to get arrested for being poor now? The most American thing I've ever heard of is universal basic income with a side of side.
Talking about these boycotts, hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets over the past 2 months to protest Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza, which has unalived more than 18,700 people, including more than 7,700 children. Now, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Events Data Project, a non-government organization specializing in conflict data collection, from October 7th to November 24th, there were at least 7,283 pro-Palestine protests that took place in more than 118 countries and territories. Now, many more have chosen to express their condemnation using their purchasing power, opting to boycott products and services that support Israel, in turn fueling the boycott, divestment and sanctions BDS movement that was set up in 2005 by a coalition of Palestinian civil society groups. Now, in the United States, students at several universities, including Columbia University in New York City, have said their attempts to speak out against Israel's B of Gaza have met intimidation and censorship. I think being at a school at Columbia that has so much global power, I felt the need to act. And also, I just think that this issue is one that connects so many other ones where we see police violence, settler colonialism, these issues that are so important in America as well, said Daria, a law student at Columbia University. Now, she's the first generation Romanian American who leads the Columbia University Apartheid Diverse Student Group, a coalition of about 80 student organizations that see Palestine as the vanguard for collective liberation of the marginalized. Now, she said she and her peers feel the university is not listening to student voices calling for divestment from Columbia's Tel Aviv campus, which Palestinians and Arabs cannot attend, reaffirmation of free speech on campus, and reinstatement of two student groups, Student for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace, JVP, that were suspended by the university in November. Now, she said that in addition to protests on and off campus, members of the community are making consumer choices tied to what they believe. People are really respecting the targeted boycotts for places like McDonald's or Starbucks. We don't buy from these places. That's incredible to hear, she told Al Jazeera. She also said there's a Colombia-specific boycott list that's being shared on social media to make local consumer choices. Across the Atlantic in the United Kingdom, a group of students at the University of York have also been holding events to raise awareness about the events in Palestine. The students requested their identities be concealed due to the backlash of publicly supporting Palestine. I do find that a lot of people don't want to take a stance on it, sort of sitting in the middle, and a lot of people that I know don't really understand what's going on very much because there's quite a lot of misinformation. I would say it's your duty to uplift voices that aren't necessarily being heard, one of the society members said. Now, I think for me to take the small action of not buying a coffee at a certain chain, it's very easy to take small actions to make sure that there's less money being directed towards violence, she said, explaining the steps she is taking. Another member said they're focused on educating people who may not be equipped with information to form an opinion on the conflict and the conditions of the Palestinian people. What is BDS? The BDS movement, established by a coalition of Palestinian civil society groups in 2005, has seen a renewed global interest despite being banned on many US and Canadian campuses and in at least 35 states in the US. The movement seeks to challenge international support for what it calls Israeli apartheid and settler colonialism, where colonists replace the indigenous community and uphold the principle that Palestinians are entitled to the same rights as the rest of humanity. Inspired by the South African anti-apartheid movement, the US civil rights movement, and the Indian anti-colonial struggle, BDS aims to make boycotts effective by focusing on selected companies and products that have a direct role in Israel's policies against Palestinians. Their campaign is divided into 4 categories: the consumer boycotts of brands that have a proven record of complicity in abuses against Palestinians; divestments, pressure on governments and institutions to stop doing business with companies that enable the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands; pressure, calls for people and institutions to pressure brands and services to end their complicity complicity in abuses against Palestinians. Now, the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee did vote to advance a bill that would expand existing anti-boycott laws in the country amid a surge of pro-Palestine activism in the country over Israel's military assault on Gaza. The bill, named the IGO Anti-Boycott Act, passed through the Foreign Affairs Committee by a near unanimous 42-3 vote, sending it to the House floor for a vote on whether to pass the legislation. And the bill expands upon the existing Anti-Boycott Act legislation that requires U.S. citizens to refuse participation in boycotts organized by foreign governments against countries friendly to the U.S. The IGO Anti-Boycott Act states that the legislation should also include boycotts organized by any international governmental organization. The advancement of the bill was celebrated by Congressman Mike Lawler, who introduced the measure as a key action against the boycott, divestment and sanctions BDS movement, which targets Israel. The IGO Anti-Boycott Act is an important measure in the global fight against anti-Semitism, Lawler said in a statement. By protecting U.S. companies from being forced to participate in boycotts against allied countries, Congress is firmly stating our proactive opposition to the boycott, divestment and sanctions BDS movement and other foreign boycotts that stand counter to American ideals. We have come to the end of the video. Kindly share your views or your thoughts on what you think about this video. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video.